everyone, today I have my hands on the Tamron 25 to 200mm lens. We're going to be doing a real-world portrait photo shoot to show you how this lens performs for both photo and video, so let's get started. The Tamron 25 to 200 G2 is a full-frame lens with a variable aperture of f2.8 to 5.6. It's available for E-mount, and today I'm testing it on the Sony a7 IV for photos and the a9 III for video. This is a second generation lens, so the original is the Tamron 28 to 200mm, and one of the biggest updates in the G2 is the expanded wide end. So we now have 25mm instead of 28mm. And before we get into it, thank you to Tamron Australia for loaning me this lens. I'm not getting paid for this review, I do not keep the gear, and all thoughts and opinions are my own. And hi, I'm Julia Trotti in case you're new here. So let's start with image quality. As you can see from these first few examples, this lens produces great images. Sometimes these super zoom lenses can have a more kit lens style quality to prioritize convenience over image quality, but this 25 to 200 produces consistently sharp images throughout the entire focal range. I also find the background looks clean and smooth when you're photographing at these longer focal lengths. And would you be able to crouch just there, kind of like facing towards the bushes? I've edited all these photos with my new Meadow Lightroom preset pack, which I'll leave linked down below if you want to get it for yourself. I use it when I want clean, natural edits. I also have exciting news that I am working on a natural light online workshop, which will be available very soon. I have a link for that too, with some details about it if you're interested. One of my takeaways from my photo shoot with this lens is that it is so convenient. 25mm in my opinion is a good wide angle starting point for the lens. It's only 1mm off from your standard 24mm prime, which is a popular focal length to use for travel photography, video, and I like to use it for weddings too. Isn't this the cutest street? I love it. So I was thinking if you like lean up right up against the fence, yeah, you could like lean your arm or elbow. 200mm is also a great focal length for the long end. Popular tele portrait lenses and event lenses like a 70 to 200 or primes like an 85 or a 135 are also covered within this zoom. So I do think 25 to 200 is a great focal range. One downside to consider is the trade-off between having to use either a higher ISO or a slower shutter speed when using this lens on the long end, as the aperture stops down to f5.6. As you can see, during our photo shoot, we had plenty of available light. It was a super bright day. And even then, I was trying to decide whether to make my shutter speed faster, which would mean grainier images, as I'd have to bump up my ISO to do that. In the end, I decided to keep my shutter speed as low as possible, so 1/250 or 200 is the slowest I like to shoot at personally, so I could also keep my ISO as low as possible to get the best image quality for us to look at. I know some of you might think that 1/250 is more than fast enough, but when you are hand holding a camera, photographing a moving subject, and using a long focal length, it is very, very easy to get motion blur in those situations. And then would it be possible for you to sit down there as well if we open the gate a little bit? I did have a few photos with motion blur because of all these variables, but I want to prioritize image quality as much as I can for my reviews. Later on in the photo shoot, I did bump up my ISO more to be able to use a faster shutter speed, so you'll be able to see examples of that as well. In terms of performance, this lens was super easy to use out on location. I was able to rely on IAF the entire time during the photo shoot without an issue. You can see that it's nice and sticky in the picture-in-picture. Let's get into the bushes here. Bye. Getting like a close-up here because I can zoom in quite a lot. I'm at 135. That looks stunning. The light is just so pretty here. It's really glowy. And this was on the a7 IV body, which I am using today, even though the a7 V has been released. The a7 V uses Sony's latest AI focusing chip, so you can expect it to be performing even better compared to what you're seeing here with the a7 IV in stills mode. Eventually, I will switch over and borrow the a7 V for all my lens reviews. By the way, in case you haven't watched it yet, make sure to check out my review of the a7 V. I'll leave that link down below. So let's head to a different day where Dan and I recorded video autofocus test on the a9 III to show the lens's performance. I'm using continuous autofocus. I have the AF transition speed set to 7, the fastest, and subject shift sensitivity set to 5, responsive. This way we can see what the lens is really capable of. This 25 to 200 episode is making use of VXD motors, so autofocus speed is another place where you're going to see a big upgrade between the G1 and G2 versions, as the G1 was using stepping motors. I find this G2 does a great job at keeping up with a moving subject during the entire focal range. I decided to test out autofocus on the widest and longest ends as usual, but also in the middle, just so you can see some examples from the majority of the barrel of the lens and get a feel for the image quality as well. This 25 to 200mm comes in a compact size considering the focal range you're getting and weighs 575 grams. There's not too many details on the body of the lens. It has a zoom ring and a focus ring, an AF to MF switch, zoom lock switch, and a customizable button. This lens has a 67mm filter thread and is moisture resistant. So let's take a closer look at the bokeh with a few examples I captured for you at different focal lengths. And then did you also want to try and sit, if you sit with like your whole body kind of facing that way, we can get a little bit over the shoulder. Maybe if you like flick your hair back. This lens has 9 circular aperture blades, and I found the bokeh looks smooth and nicely rounded throughout the shoot. Sometimes with large range zooms like this or slower apertures, the background can look nervous, but in this case, it has a nice high quality look to it. Now that we're taking a closer up look, you can see some texture in the bokeh that's more obvious the more zoomed in you are, but I do still like how it looks. There's no chromatic aberration in the bokeh and it stays nice and round. This lens has a pretty typical zoom lens flare. At times it's very minimal, which makes it super easy to work with, and other times it looks more prominent. What you get will all depend on the strength of your light source, what focal length you're shooting at, and your angle to the light source. I have a bunch of different examples for you to look at throughout the entire zoom range. Sometimes you can see a more defined string of flares, which I was able to find between 25 and about 90mm. The more zoomed in you go, the more ghosting you get from the flares too. So you'll see the 85mm shots here has both a defined lens flare and a more wispy yellow flare too, which I like for golden hour shots. It's a nice color. When shooting directly into the sun, you do get some ghosting as well. This lens handles chromatic aberration exceptionally well. Even with all these bright backlit shots and the photos from our photo shoot, I wasn't able to find any CA in my shots. So who is this lens for? This is definitely a lens for you if you're looking for an easy all-in-one lens that you can take with you on hikes, photo shoots, or everyday shooting without the need for any lens swaps thanks to its wide focal range that covers 24 to 70 and 70 to 200. Tamron have quite a few all-in-one lenses in their lineup now, and I have covered all of them in separate review videos, so I'll leave them all linked in the description for you if you want to take a look at those reviews and see example images to help make up your mind. I, as always, have a few comparisons to other lenses with a similar focal range that I want to mention. So first, we have the Sigma 20 to 200mm DG Contemporary, which gives you an even wider starting focal length. However, it has a slower starting aperture at f2.8 to 5.6. There is also the Sony 24 to 240mm OSS, which gives you 40mm extra on the long end, but just like the Sigma, has a slower aperture at f3.5 to 6.3. So the Tamron is a strong option for this focal range with a brighter aperture. It's going to help you be able to keep your ISO down and your shutter speed faster. As you can see from my photo shoot, even when I am shooting in brighter light, I have to keep my ISO quite a lot higher than base. If you are looking at other Tamron super zoom lenses, you can usually get longer reach, but also at the expense of aperture. We have the Tamron 28 to 300 f4 to 7.1, and also the Tamron 50 to 400 f4.5 to 6.3, just to name a few, but again, I will leave those reviews linked down below for you. So I'm going to take a photo at every single focal length of this lens with both Phoebe and I standing in the same spot, just so you can get an idea of the focal range that we have to work with here. So I'm going to start off on the widest end, which is 25mm, and then we'll go 35, 50, 70, 100, 135, and last but not least, we have 200mm. So I'm going to do that one more time, but this time I'm going to be moving around with each focal length to frame each shot to look the same. So I'm going to start off at 200mm. We have like a mid-length shot that we're working with, and then I've got to get closer with each focal length. So 135, 100, 70, and then this is 50, 35, and 20. 25, I said 20, whoops. So that is all I have for today's review. Don't forget to check out my new Meadow Lightroom preset pack below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I'll see you all next time. Bye.